You've probably noticed something strange. People your age aren't following careers anymore. They're building systems. Not businesses in the traditional sense, not jobs, not even side hustles in the way older generations understand them. Systems. A 19-year-old with no degree making money from 5 different sources. A 22-year-old earning more from digital products than a full-time salary. Someone with a small audience making consistent income while barely posting. And it feels confusing because if you compare it to how money used to work, it doesn't make sense. But here's the reality. Gen Z didn't just adapt to the economy, they built a completely different business model inside it. And once you understand how it works, you can't unsee it. If you go back even 15 to 20 years, making money required 3 things: time, location, and permission. You needed a job. You needed to show up somewhere, and someone had to approve you. That was the system. But between 2020 and 2023, something shifted. Remote work exploded, platforms matured, and attention became monetizable. Now you don't need location, you don't always need permission, and most importantly, your time is no longer directly tied to your income. That's the foundation of Gen Z's business model. Not working harder, but decoupling time from money. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people still think Gen Z makes money from content. That's only the surface. The real model is layered, and it usually starts with something simple: attention. Not millions of followers, just enough. Because today, even 1,000 to 10,000 people can be monetized. A small creator selling a $20 digital product to 5% of a 5,000 person audience makes $5,000. That's not theory, that's happening every day. But attention alone isn't the business, it's the entry point. What Gen Z does differently is what they do next. They convert attention into ownership. Digital products, communities, courses, templates, paid newsletters. Things that don't require constant time once created. And this is where psychology plays a huge role, because your brain still wants immediate reward. Post a video, get views, get likes, dopamine. But Gen Z is slowly learning to delay that reward. Instead of chasing viral content every day, they build assets, something that keeps paying after the work is done. That's a completely different mindset, and it didn't come from nowhere. It came from instability. Gen Z grew up watching layoffs, inflation spikes, and rising living costs. In 2022 alone, tech companies laid off over 150,000 workers. People with stable jobs, gone in weeks. So the idea of relying on one income source started to feel risky. And your brain reacts to that. It shifts from security through stability to security through diversification. That's why Gen Z doesn't trust one paycheck. They want multiple streams, even if each one is smaller, because psychologically it feels safer. But this model isn't easy, it just looks flexible. Because instead of one clear path, you're managing multiple uncertain ones. You're testing, failing, adjusting constantly, and there's no guaranteed outcome, which creates a different kind of stress. Not, I hate my job, but I don't know if this will work. And that uncertainty is something older systems protected you from. But Gen Z accepts it, because the upside is control. Now let's talk about one of the most misunderstood parts: digital products. People hear that and think it's easy money. But what's actually happening is deeper. Gen Z is packaging knowledge. Not academic knowledge, but practical knowledge. How to edit videos, how to grow an audience, how to use AI tools, how to freelance. And they're selling it directly, with no middle layer. Historically, knowledge had gatekeepers, universities, companies, institutions. Now, a 20-year-old can learn something in 6 months and monetize it immediately. That changes the timeline of income completely, but it also changes identity. Because now you're not defined by a role, you're defined by what you know and how you distribute it. This also creates pressure, because if your income depends on your knowledge, you constantly feel like you need to know more, learn faster, stay ahead. It becomes a cycle: earn, learn, upgrade, earn again. Powerful, but exhausting if you don't manage it. Another layer people miss is leverage. Gen Z doesn't just build income, they build leverage. Doing something once and benefiting multiple times. A video can bring views for months, a product can sell while you sleep, a system can run without you. That's very different from traditional work where effort equals output. Here, effort creates assets, and assets produce output. But building leverage takes time with no immediate reward, and most people quit in that phase. Because your brain is wired for quick feedback. You want results now, not later. So the people who succeed aren't necessarily smarter, they're just better at tolerating delayed results. Zoom out, and this isn't just about individuals, it's about the economy. We're moving into what's now called the creator economy, estimated at over $250 billion globally and growing fast. But unlike traditional industries, it's fragmented. Millions of small earners instead of a few large employers. There's no single ladder anymore, there are thousands of paths, but each one is uncertain. This creates something new: personalized capitalism, where your income depends on your ability to create, adapt, and capture attention, not just follow a system. And that's both freeing and overwhelming, because now you're responsible for designing your own model. There's no default path. And that's where most people get stuck, not because they can't do it, but because they don't know where to start, or they keep comparing themselves to people who are already ahead. But most of what you see online is the result, not the process. The failed attempts aren't visible. The months with no income aren't visible. The experiments that didn't work, invisible. And if you don't understand that, you'll think everyone else figured it out faster than you. They didn't. They just stayed longer. And this is where everything connects. Gen Z's business model isn't about shortcuts, it's about structure. Build attention, convert to assets, create leverage, diversify income, repeat. That's the loop. But the deeper layer is psychological. It's about shifting from needing certainty to operating in uncertainty, from trading time to building systems, from following paths to creating them. And not everyone is comfortable with that because it requires something most people avoid: responsibility. Not just for your work, but for your direction. So if you've ever felt like things are unclear, like there's no single right move, that's not a flaw in the system, that is the system. And maybe the real question isn't how do Gen Z make money, it's are you willing to think the way they do? Because once you see this model clearly, you realize something important. There's no going back to how it used to work, only forward into something you have to build yourself. And if this changed the way you see money, then you're starting to see what most people don't. Because this isn't just about Gen Z. It's about how the entire game is shifting, and most people are still playing by old rules. If you want to understand this deeper, how money actually works now, how people are building systems, how psychology is shaping income, then make sure you subscribe, because the next videos are going even deeper into this.